Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Mark Anderson. I am with Seagate, and I have some exciting guests with me here. We're going to have a little discussion around AI, cloud storage, and essentially how you can monetize your content, and not just monetize, but really activate your content through some of the exciting things that Starchive is doing, and how they've worked with Seagate to help make that possible. So with that, let's do some quick introductions. Peter, you want to start?
Hey, everybody. How you doing? My name's Peter Agelasso. I'm the co-founder of Starchive. I started this journey as a musician and an archaeologist. And so I'm bringing some perspective from archaeology to archiving and big object storage.
Do you still have a pit helmet?
I still have my datum stakes and all my trowels. And I will say, for real, I use archaeology every day in digital media. I think it is a great analog. When we talk about object storage, we could be talking about artifacts. We could be talking about a lot of different things, but ultimately it's the same buried amount of data. And these principles really help guide us. So happy to share with that.
Thank you. Richard?
My name is Richard Avert. I'm Peter's co-founder. I actually met Peter, we knew each other for a while, but I joined him about 11 years ago in this project. And it was really because of that story he just told. My background is in fine arts and photography. And when Peter described the relationship between how he saw objects and data for archaeology as related to digital objects, it really resonated with me. And so we've been on this together, working ever since. It didn't hurt that at the time I met him, he had sort of worked a little bit on this software, and he had one committed client, and it was Bob Dylan. And I couldn't kind of wrap my head around how Bob Dylan becomes your very first client for this, but that was enticing enough that we joined forces.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. So with that, what is Starchive, and where did you come up with the name?
Well, I'll start with the name, and then Richard, you can give us, So you would think that if Bob Dylan was our first customer, that it would be about stars, celebrities. It's not, right? What it's really about is one of my favorite things, which I think has been a part of culture from the dawn of time, which is the night sky and all of the constellations. It's all of the stars. And so what I just kind of saw, I'm sitting in a trench in Honduras and digging post-classic, 1100 AD artifacts out of the ground. And I was thinking about, where are we going with digital? This is 1995, where all of the things are happening. So with the constellations, each star is a point of metadata. Folders don't exist in our brains. We have this total attachment to data and how we express it on objects. And a single point could be part of this constellation or that constellation. And I just thought it was a big metaphor. Plus, storage is massive. And so is the universe.
It's always hard to follow Peter. But Starchive, in practical terms, is both a digital asset management backbone or media asset management backbone in sort of most traditional sense, along with a platform that supports other things. We took a very unique approach to how we thought about what digital asset management meant for people like Dylan or like any creator or content owner with a vast archive. And it was very much about helping make it possible for you to put all of your assets of every type, audio, video, imagery, records about physical objects, scans of notebooks, letters, whatever it is, into a system that allowed you to add three very key types of metadata. You have human metadata, always the most valuable, also the hardest to get, right? Really do the effort to put in the stories that describe what the asset is. You've got digital data, particularly for anything, or intrinsic data for anything created digitally. It's like all of that, metadata that's embedded in the file record, which tells a story, tells a camera to tell an f-stop and a geolocation, all those things. And then there's now, of course, the emergence of AI data. We've been using basic AI since about 2017 in our application. Obviously, in the last 24 months, we've gone through this massive evolution in the AI landscape. And so AI is now just helping automate the aggregation of that data to replace the requirement that humans do so much of it. And all of that, once you have those assets and that data in a system like Starchive, you can allow computers to do what computers do best, which is create the connections, as Peter was describing, about constellations, which is take every individual data value and help relate every object that shares that data value. And now on demand, your application, it's like putting filters over your eyes. Like today I show up and I need to look at my body of assets or content with a particular frame of reference or lens. And you're not restricted to some hierarchy or sort of organized storage paradigm that locks you in from being flexible. That's really what it's about.
Fantastic. And so first, I'll throw you a softball. What made you choose Seagate and Seagate's Lyve Cloud as a storage partner or as your main storage partner for Starchive?
It's a great question and one of our favorite ones lately because we like many of us who started in the cloud, we originally built on-prem software, then we moved to the cloud with AWS. We have a lot of services still in AWS, but we struggled with AWS because of the unpredictability of our pricing. And we needed to be able to both lower the overall cost for our clients, so more aggressive pricing, but also we need to be able to predict how that pricing would manifest for the clients. And so for us, going to Seagate gave us a whole bunch of things. It gave us really highly performant frontline storage, and accessibility. And it gave us a fixed price framework that we could use and predict for our clients as well. So they could rely on it. Because a lot of what our clients are doing is they're using Starchive as an application to sort of curate and add their content into object storage, but then they're using other applications they build, websites, custom applications, other front ends to deliver that content to consumers without ever moving it. And so the beauty of object storage, right, is that everything is URL addressable in the cloud. And so if they know that they don't have to guess how much ins and outs they're going to have, how many transformations they're going to have based on that customer or front end usage, then they have the freedom to experiment a lot more. And that was really important to us. So that this relationship has been fabulous for that reason.
Fantastic. And in terms of solving customer problems, where you were telling me about a customer of yours that has a huge pipeline right now, or a potential customer that has a huge pipeline right now. Tell me about who comes to you. What problems are you solving? What problems are do these partners have? How are you enabling them to really activate their content?
So we talked about the star in Starchive. So let's move on to the archive part, because that's where it comes. What's so interesting about an archive is it's all the knowledge, right? It is everything. It's not just this for this particular piece of workflow, right? And so a number of our customers, like take Bob Dylan or the Leonard Cohen archive or a number of these, older legacy treasures, really. Everything. I mean, down to the, Bob Dylan's, believe it or not, Bob Dylan has an amazing matchbook collection, right? He collected matchbooks at all of the folk clubs so we're down to images, audio, video, making documentaries, everything. So the archive is absolutely everything. And what we've learned, especially with Seagate's cloud and predictability, is we can make an archive that active center from where everything else can work. And because it's so visual, right? And because it taps into your brain, we're very passionate about this human and digital connection, right? This is a really important thing that we need to be mindful of as a society as we're embracing these technologies. Just as an aside, as an archaeologist, if I look out at all of this, I call it paleo digital. Okay. This is the early days of thousands of years of digital that we're about to deal with. So Seagate was the obvious partner in that they store 4 trillion gigabytes across their metal. So what our customers do is put in absolutely everything, and then the constellation happens. Oh my gosh, look at that photograph. Well, where was that shot? Oh, it was over here. Well, who shot it? Oh my gosh, look what they did over here. And so that just is a natural creative, runway to really get in and make things. And so archives, in the early days, we were talking to some really fascinating archives, and they would take us into the basement, show us the lock and the fire detection proof, which is great. And everybody should do that. But it walled it off from activation. And that's what we are really working to solve, is how do we not only collect more of the knowledge, but how do we really make it accessible And we're doing that with the content owners who hopefully will then extend it to the communities that are really here for the content.
But in terms of making it accessible, it's really doing more than that, because your co-founder Eric mentioned something that was really fascinating to me, which is that, well, Bob Dylan's gospel collection.
Yeah.
That actually was born out of Starchive. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, we were lucky enough to just be in the office with Jeff Rosen, Bob Dylan's manager for 30 plus years, the day that this came together. And their normal course, when you're Bob Dylan, you know that it's worth the money to pay an archivist to add that human metadata, right? The opportunity cost is clear. That's not true for all of us, which is why AI is so powerful now. But with them, constantly they were digitizing and adding new content that they were finding from all over the place. Bob's a bit of a pack rat. So they put in some film that we were in Jeff Rosen's office watching. And it was a time when a period in Bob's life where for about 2 years, he went pretty hardcore gospel. And everybody who follows Bob kind of knows that, but that content hasn't really been accessible anywhere. And Jeff was watching a video, I guess it's digitized film, that was in his Starchive that he had never seen before, of Bob playing piano, and a woman sits down next to him and she starts playing, and then Bob jumps up and he just starts preaching. And Jeff was flabbergasted. And he just said, he said to us, well, wait a minute, where did this come from? What else do we have? And in minutes, because of the way that data and object storage works, he was able to sort of go from that video to other videos shot by the same filmmaker, to photographs at some of those venues, to some other records. And before we left his office, a half an hour later, he said, I'm going to make a project out of this. And 2 years later was a 6 CD, 2 DVD box set from this stuff. And it's not that that was the thing. It was like rediscovering old content. But since we live in a world where we're all living through this atomization of attention, and there's a Reddit thread for pretty much every niche interest in the world. And in every one of those niche interests, that's right. In every one of those niche interests, there are content creators who are making imagery, who are making videos, who are telling stories, who are doing the work that the community wants. And now that you can get those assets to that community in a meaningful way, how do you manage that at scale? And so that's really what we're trying to do, is take that same experience with the Dylan team and translate it into a massively scalable opportunity for any content creator or content owner.
And then, but on top of that, your platform, as well as the live cloud storage underneath it, has also enabled more, right? Because you can also reach in. I mean, you can also now do more with the content outside of even just making these connections. It's how are you activating it beyond that?
Well, I mean, again, because Seagate is, Seagate, who here has a Seagate drive? Everybody, right? Seagate is one of the largest providers of storage ever. And because we were able to really bring this to let's call it a reasonable cost, they could do things like, well, let's take, this is like the Leonard Cohen archive. Let's take the multi-tracks of 10 years of world tours and let's put them in Starchive as Pro Tools sessions, because we want the high quality masters in case we want to do anything. Okay, great. So they've got all the high quality masters, but now someone's got to listen to that. They got to curate it. They got to do these things. So because Starchive was born in a recording studio, I mentioned it, I'm an archaeologist, but I love to play music and I love to record music, and recording is something that, come on, we're at NAB, right? So it's like, this is a big deal, not only to us, this is a critical period of time, from an archaeological perspective. So with, being able to take, 50 terabytes of world tours, being able to put it all in so that the Pro Tools sessions can be organized and kept in that same structured, but then put on top of it a curation layer and a data layer and a transformation layer, so that all those 24-bit, 192 kilohertz, wave files could output let's call it a 328 kbps MP3 that could be used as a rough proxy. And because we had the ability to work with the digitizers, we said, hey, look, why don't you just, output into the Pro Tools session roughmix.mp3, right? Or roughmix.wave. And then Starchive generates through transformation. It's got, I was coming from a recording studio. We got to transform things, and, they were able to do a single search for roughmix.mp3 across the 10 years of world tours, put it into a playlist, immediately share it with the management, and they started to listen to this. So that cut out so much workflow. And here's why that's important, is because workflow is a necessary aim to where we're trying to get. But if you can't get it to the people that really make it, push it forward, it's work for nothing.
Let me just mention about the platform side too, though, because I think this is a difference that's partially enabled by this fixed price costing paradigm with Seagate, which is that Studs Terkel's another example. We're the backbone for the Studs Terkel archive. He's, I don't know if you know him. Some of you in this room are clearly too young to probably know who Studs Terkel is, but, famous Chicago radio, talk show guy from the 1940s to the 1980s. About 9,000 hours of audio tracks. Really remarkable stuff. And the Studs Terkel group at WFMT Chicago is a small nonprofit organization with a big cultural mission and a massive archive. And so they use Starchive internally as they digitize with the Library of Congress all of these recordings and add the metadata to them. And then their job is to share them in educational environments and to the public. But they don't have enough staff to constantly be managing publishing these things in other places. So instead, they built a little Drupal skeleton website, basically, that connects to the APIs for Starchive, because we're an API-driven application on top of the Seagate's APIs to cloud storage. And every night, that website just syncs over new content from their Starchive. They're never moving the assets. They're never moving the data. But if you go to the Studs Terkel website, you can search, and whatever content they finish today is live there tomorrow. And that paradigm is now powering other user applications that are literally built on top of the Starchive API, but they don't look anything like our application at all. They're entire user experiences for web apps and for mobile and immersive experiences even, all without ever moving your assets out of the Seagate cloud. We're just addressing the objects and the data via the API.
Yeah, and just one thing I want to add to this is, by publishing, you create this opportunity for a self-resonating content system, because you're putting content out that users in that community might want to interact with, might want to remix, as in the case of, Studs Terkel. There's an education initiative where they can remix some of these things. And you've got this publishing layer coming out of Seagate, but you also have this user-generated content input layer coming back, which is really how we get more of the knowledge. And there's some really interesting things going on at Starchive, and we really are so grateful to share them with you. Thanks everybody for coming to listen to us yap a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, yes. I mean, this is fascinating, guys. So what can you tell me in terms of, helping others monetize their content and activate their content, make it really useful? I mean, it just seems fascinating that not only is it just about digitization, being able to find your content, but finding new connections within your content as well.
Yeah. I mean, the one of the things that's exciting about where we're headed, right, is that the explosion of AI services and tools that are available today, both in the generative side or transformation side and in the data side, really changes the landscape for what I describe as the whole, without it sounding denigrating, the sort of middle economy, the vast middle class of content owners and producers. Roseanne Cash said to us one time, she's one of our clients, and she said, look, I'm not the financial hero that Dylan is, but I kind of have a cultural hero space with my community.
The financial hero. He definitely is.
And so
you meant folk.
Yeah. Well, no, she actually meant economic.
Yeah. Right.
And so the point is, there's this whole ecosystem of people, it's the vast majority of us, who create content, where there is economic opportunity, but we need tools and services to help us take advantage of it because we don't have a team of archivists. So the AI is bringing that forward. And we took an approach that said, rather than try to build our own AI, that's not our specialty, right? We have a musician and an artist on stage, but what we realized was there are so many remarkable API addressable AIs, tools and services out there today, and there will be more tomorrow and the day after and the day after. What we're doing in this next phase is integrating sort of an AI marketplace of services that people can connect their Starchive to, the way you can connect your Starchive to a Canva account or something today, and then take advantage of the things that serve your particular needs in order to deliver that content back to the public in a way to make new money and revenue off of it.
So let's talk about kind of customers on the two extreme levels. Think of like the smallest scale customer that you would have who could take advantage of Starchive. What would that look like?
Well, I mean, that customer could, believe it or not, start with a free Starchive because we have a free model, free version. So I'm really thinking about someone maybe who's first year in college or, a new creator. And you know what they could do with Starchive with that free version? They could, create a embeddable uploader, put it on their website, and start becoming their own user generated content platform. They could go and create oral histories of their entire family. They could do all of these different things. But what we're doing is simplifying some of the challenges, which we all want to have high quality media, but it needs to be really playable. So we're automating a lot of the encoding. And I think one of the things, just tying this back to what we were just talking about with new revenue opportunities and shifting our thinking of what all this stuff really is. I come back to paleo digital. All right. Two things. AI. I want to direct everybody's attention to the mixing board that's making my voice output. On the back of it are inputs and outputs. That's what Starchive has built. We built API addressable endpoints and outpoints on top of this storage layer. And so we are able to take things in and take things out. That's part of our AI strategy, is connecting, getting things in, getting things out. But as I go back to the types of things that, are both in our pipeline and, for young customers, which can really start, same tools that Bob and some of these other people are really using. I want to just kind of give my point of view just really quick about where some of this digital media is going as it relates to making money and unlocking new assets. So if I said, does everybody know what a video file is, what a movie file is? What would we agree that is? Maybe it's got a play button and it moves in time. Maybe it's got a soundtrack and we can hear it, right? But in reality, a little bit above the ones and zeros that are really that digital video file, there are media elements. There's a soundtrack. There's still frames. There's all these things. So with Bob Dylan is a great example. They had some great film from Bob's 1966, electric tour where he went electric in England. And, they didn't want to necessarily use some of the old photographs from that. And then what Starchive helped the management do is, hey, pick out some clips from some of this great D.A. Pennebaker film. And then let's go and sequence the still frames out of it. Okay. So it started out as a movie and then it became an image, but wait, there's more, right? So now we're into generative art. Maybe there's a soundtrack. Maybe someone's talking. Well, now that text is an input to create more other things. So the type of thing that we're doing for, who you mentioned, Mark, at this early creator is whether we say it's day one or all the way to Dylan. Hey, if you start with your archive now, we want to be a trusted company. We want to earn your respect from the midwife to the undertaker. We're talking about hundreds of years, thousands of years of digital accumulation that is about to happen. It's already happening at scales that I think a lot of us are having a hard time managing. So that place for generative art, Seagate is a perfect partner for us to be like, okay, I've always said that computers can watch TV far better than humans can. Well, wait till they start getting into all the generative art and we're dealing with 10s and 30,000 files every 2 minutes. You think it's changing now? This is only accelerating and getting weirder, which is good because, I like that kind of stuff. So.
But it's also not just about what we think of as content creators, right? It's even small content owners. We talked about even young athletes these days with the new NIL laws.
Yeah. The opportunities are kind of endless, right? That idea of the atomization of attention gives all of us, anybody in the content landscape, opportunities that didn't exist just a few years ago. And so with the right tools, backing you up, you have an opportunity to create a meaningful living, that before would have taken a team of people to do. Peter and I used to say we didn't build Starchive because we wanted Starchive. We built Starchive because we didn't have a choice, because we needed Starchive to do the things we wanted to do with our content. And so we kind of come at this from that content owner, content creator perspective and trying to figure out what is required in order to take advantage of the opportunities that are laid out in front of us. So.
And then flipping it to and we'll keep this quick because we give a little time for questions, but on the large scale, who's your biggest customer, or I should say, where, beyond Bob Dylan, organizationally, like what organizations or what doesn't, when an organization engages with you that owns a bunch of content, what are the possibilities?
Maybe a good one to talk about is Essence Magazine, because they're, sort of adjacent, but very different than Dylan in lots of ways.
And been around for 50 years.
So, they've got 50 years of history and extraordinary content. They do Essence Fest every year, which produces, well, these days it's producing 70 or 75 terabytes in 4 days every year or more, right? Because the fidelity keeps going up. They're a big client. They've got many hundreds of terabytes. We'll discuss how much, but a great example of what we did with them is when COVID hit and all the world locked down and Essence Fest had to go virtual, like so many other things, they were in a bit of a panic because they had never done a virtual fest and they knew they had all this content, but they don't really have data accessibility to it. So we had it all in Starchive already. So we used, AWS's celebrity recognition tool. We processed about 6,000 hours of video in about 8 days, tagging all the celebrities across it, and gave them access to the content that they already had, but didn't know how to get into in depth. And that allowed them to produce bits of content that got over 1 billion views in aggregate, since that Essence Fest in 2020. So, they're at the other end of the spectrum. They're a big player.
Yeah. And here's also an interesting data point. Not a Starchive customer yet, but through Seagate, we've been really working to collaborate around, around business development. And this just blew my mind. So I have a huge amount of respect for a woman named Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa was a really good human being. She took care of a lot of people. She also created, maybe not just her, 1.6 petabytes of digital information. So if Mother Teresa created 1.6 petabytes of information, and her legacy is still growing strong, which is probably still creating it, the scale, that's, if there's a couple of things, if there's one big takeaway from our talk today, just, it's about to get so much bigger than it is. And it's gonna happen in really surprising ways. And, I promise, maybe not next year, but probably in 2026, everybody will have their petabyte of cloud storage, because with the way that we're interacting and moving through life, we are creating so much digital. I take it no one has taken a picture today, right? No, you didn't add another byte to the camera, right?
All right. With that, we've got just a few minutes left. Does anyone have any questions? Sure. So you were asking about security. Security of the cloud or security in general? Okay. Do you want to talk about security and how?
Yeah. So security can happen a lot of, layers, right? There's, ISO compliance, there's durability, there's, all sorts of things. What we found is honestly a lot of the times that security is in breach is because people have bad passwords, or they're really getting spoofed online and doing things that they probably shouldn't have done, right? The durability of Seagate's, I would talk about security in a couple of ways. There's software layers that I think provide things. There's actually the preservation and then the durability. But, one of the things we like to talk about is the legacy of security too, which is, hey, if you don't keep some of these things fresh in people's minds, the artists from the 40s and the 50s, they go away. People don't know about them. But let's stick to the software side, because I think that's where you were really coming from. A lot of archivists have been talking to me about fixity and basically bit rot. And so I think one of the biggest challenges to security is actually how do we keep these files healthy? Outside of just the obvious multi-factor authentication and all of this stuff. And what's so interesting about these clouds is they are a self-healing, immutable linked checksums. It's kind of mind-blowing. And for all of my archivist friends, fixity's kind of gone away at Seagate and other clouds. That problem was engineered to fix. So if you want me to speak a little bit later after this, I'm happy to go into some more of the security, but there's the standards, there's obfuscation, there's tenant separation, there's a bunch of different things, but that's a good question.
Yeah. And certainly you can also create immutable objects. for ransomware protection. And
yeah, multi-region durability and stuff like that. So.
All right. Any other questions? We have a minute left. Okay. Well, in that case, any last words you guys any last things you want to share?
I think maybe the only thing that Peter didn't say, that I expected him to was sort of our sort of hypothetical position that based on the last 10 years of our work and talking to the people we've talked to, we think that ballpark 95 to 98% of the valuable media in the world is not online today, which is a mind-blowing number when you think about how much is online, right? And we're not necessarily talking about my mom's pictures, right? They're probably not that valuable except to us. But I mean, the really professionally or the content that has a community around it, that cares about it, a huge percentage of that is still sitting on the sidelines because cloud storage has been expensive, because AI hasn't been ready and affordable enough to do the human job of doing a lot of this data aggregation and intelligence that you need. And because the tools that you need in order to capitalize on that opportunity, if you get it into the cloud and you get it tagged up, haven't been there. But that's all changing. And so our job, we feel like, is to unlock this enormous latent potential in the digital media that's sitting on the sidelines.
Because we want this to be preserved for a really long time. I mean, when you were building in stone as an archaeologist, and I'll wrap up because I know everybody wants to do something. But basically, when you're building with stone, that's an immutable building, right? It's going to maybe weather a little bit. But if you lost the 20th century's, output, just out of curiosity, what would that Lloyd's of London insurance claim be? I mean, this is like so critical to our culture, to who we are as a civilization, as a planet. So that's part of our motivation and why we're so excited to partner with someone like Seagate, because they might be able to store it all. That's what I'm banking on. And I think it's true.
And we'd be happy to. So thank you very much. It's been a great conversation. Thank you all.